So let's step back a little bit and kind of formally introduce yourself. Obviously, your name. What brings you to human services? Like what? Not necessarily, or you don't have to give like a job title. I'm not looking for that, but your role in human services, and then just a little bit about yourself. You can share, like I've said before, as much as you want, as little as you want. The floor is yours.
My name is Lonnie Duncan. I was born to a military family. My dad was in the Navy. He was EOD, and I was born in Puerto Rico. And then we moved to Hawaii, Rhode Island, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. I ended up moving 16 times by the time I was 18. Not because of my father. I think it was because of just the inconsistency in my mother's life. My dad left when I was 3. She married my stepdad by the time I was 5 or 6. He was abusive, alcoholic, physically, verbally, emotionally. And I struggled. I had one older brother by my real father, and then 2 younger brothers and a younger sister by my stepdad. So it was, growing up, if you wanted to have attention, you had to be loud, and you had to either do extremely, extremely well or cause problems in order to get your attention or to get, any type of focus on you. And so I went the other way. I was the class clown. I had a lot of behavioral issues. I moved in with my grandparents, age 13, ended up getting bullied and chased home. And my grandfather told me, if somebody's threatening the house or threatening you, this is where our protection is. And at 13, I thought I was doing the right thing. 2 kids followed me home and were bullying me and were jumping on my bike in the backyard. And so I went and got the shotgun and warned them. So I opened the door. I presented the shotgun. They took off running. And I immediately put it away. And I was like, okay, am I going to get in trouble? Am I not going to get in trouble? My grandfather came home. I hid. And they were looking for me. Right when he pulled up, I saw Joel run across the road and talk to him and tell him what happened. And so I was hiding, and then the cops came, and they were all looking for me, and I was hidden under a bush, like watching them. And my Uncle Randy actually saw me and ended up chasing me down and tackling me, and I ended up going to Cedar Springs, which was a mental hospital. And through that experience, it was a nightmare. I mean, we were totally drugged up. Everybody there was just a zombie. We would be handed, a small paper cup of like 6 to 8 pills every morning, every night. It didn't matter if you asked what they weren't going to tell you. And if you cheeked them or tried to, act like you took them, then first you would lose your privileges. And see, I was trying to figure out how to get out of there. And then you wouldn't be able to go to the game room. You wouldn't be able to go to the classes. And so I got caught cheeking my meds. And they ended up taking me in the back, strapping me down to like a wooden box spring, like literally like one arm on each corner and one leg on each corner, and left me in there for several hours. And that's where I learned disassociation, which I'm sure I had already done it a lot when I was a child, but literally that's the only way I survived being strapped down like that.
The disassociation part, that's kind of like a self-projection experience, right? Where you kind of outside of the body in a moment of stress.
Yeah. And you kind of watch the situation. Mm-hmm. My therapist, because I think everybody should have therapy, refers to it as like my superpower, but also my kryptonite, which, disassociating, I became a professional at it. And sometimes it would happen unconsciously. And so it's very negative on relationships. And when people are close to you, when you're triggered, a lot of times I would find myself disassociating and like looking past the person, and I'm just like out there, not paying attention, not soaking up, not being present. They ended up letting me out of there, and I played the game and went to the groups and tried to say everything that was supposed to be said. And according to them, I was the kid that tried to shoot somebody. I definitely didn't try to shoot somebody. And so I felt like, I was like, I'm lost. I'm done. This is supposed to be a place to help me and supposed to be a place to teach me new coping skills. And it wasn't. It was literally just like a dope farm. It almost felt experimental. I had a roommate that moved in, or roommate or fellow client. I don't know, however you would term that.
Mate, I guess.
Yeah, and he was 17, and this was his third time at Cedar Springs, and he had, or second time, and the first time he had ran and took off out the front doors, and he told me, he was like, you're in here for trying to shoot somebody. You're probably going to be here till you're 18, then get transferred to a detention center till you're 21, then you may or may not be released. And I was 13, and so I was like flipping out. And I was like, okay, well, what are you suggesting? He was like, you have to hurt yourself. And so I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you have to hurt yourself bad enough to go to the hospital to convince your mother or your father to take you out of here. And this was in like an evening when we were laying on our backs, just discussing things at night. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm ready. And I was pumped. And he was like, what, now? And I was like, yeah. And his idea, just back up and kick one of the bolted down bedposts to the floor as hard as I could. And so I was like, okay, here we go. And so he leaned up in bed, and I took like 3 steps and just kicked it as hard as I could. And it, like, my pinky toe bone was jammed all the way back into my foot. I started screaming. Orderlies came, ended up going to the hospital, and it actually panned out exactly how he said it was going to. And my mom was with me for like 2 nights, and then the third day, and they did the EEGs, and I was throwing up and I had a concussion. And back then they didn't really take it very seriously. And so I got out. She took me out, continued to have behavioral problems because it didn't address anything. The place, the groups and stuff, they were just trying to modify my behavior and try to tell me, don't do this. And this is why you shouldn't do this, because pretty much because society doesn't do that. And that's zero explanation and zero coping skills. And, it was kind of asinine. I got out, still had behavioral problems, got sent to Marcoma Bible Academy, which I got. My mom.
How old were you when you got out?
I was still 13. So my mom and my stepdad, they actually got in a fight, separated. We moved down to Florida. This was 8th grade. I skipped the whole year of Florida. Finally, my mom worked 2 jobs. And finally, when they did get a letter to my mom, because I would just circle around the block and get the mail and stuff, and then go fishing all day because we lived at the beach. And so the whole reason why I was skipping school was because of the bullying thing, because there were the surfers and everybody around there, and I was always the new kid that came in. So I ended up skipping school, and then she ended up taking me into the school at the end of the year, and the teacher didn't even know me. So, and they agreed. They were like, well, if he goes to a different school, then we'll pass him, which I don't even know how that was legal, but ended up moving back to North Carolina. My mom and my stepdad got back together. I started 9th grade somewhere new, and there were a lot of gangs around the area. And so I carried a knife on me, and somebody said that I had a knife on me at school. They suspended me for 10 days. The day I came back, I had another knife. They expelled me. I was like, okay, fine. And they said, well, as long as he goes to a different school, we'll pass him. Okay.
This is the second time, right?
Yeah.
My goodness.
And so my mom was like, you're getting shipped off somewhere. And she tried to present it like it was an amazing opportunity, which I guess it could have been. And so I got sent to Markham Bible Academy at 15. And it was very structured, and I did well until some guy started dating my girlfriend at the time. And he started conflict with me, and I was really upset, and I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. And so I was like, blah, blah, blah. We were yelling, and I was like, I'm so angry, blah, blah, blah. And I hit the ground and broke my finger. My knuckle went back into my hand. And so then they took me to the hospital, and I was like, it's fine. It'll be fine. And then one of the teachers found like a naked drawing I'd made the summer before. And so this was like 8 months, because we started a journal, and I totally forgot it was in the back. Turned it in. They found it. They're like, called me in the office. This is your last straw. I mean, this was, your last strike. We're kicking you out. We already have you a plane ticket. We're flying you home, because the school was in Oklahoma. Okay. So I was like, okay, fine. Flew back, got back involved with some of the same people, because it was the same house in Concord. And then started selling weed. I ended up getting caught with 4 ounces of weed. They charged me with intent to sell and deliver at 15, and I turned 16 before the court date, and so they tried me as an adult. I was looking at 15 years in prison, and my mom worked with the DA and got me in a program, and it was a teen challenge in Virginia. Ended up finishing 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in 1 year. Stayed focused, I did learn a lot. It was a positive peer culture program. It was focused on your strengths, and we went through different character qualities like you had to go through. And so just learning about how to develop and implement and show your character qualities without, I guess, fear of repercussion was important for me. And being able to feel the freedom of expressing yourself like in a group, because the positive peer culture, the model they had, like any of which it was super productive. It could have been, sometimes it was used like students would call, they're called informals, which is like you call an informal, the person has the opportunity to be like, yeah, I'm really upset, I'm angry, and then it circles back around. Well, anger is a surface issue. Let's talk about what caused or brought up that feeling of anger and caused you to lash out. And so it was amazing watching the process and being a part of the process, because like you would see when people were in the program, me included, I had dyed silver hair when I first went in the program and dreadlocks. Through the process of the program and through me developing, and I was like, okay, well, there's a different way of life. There's people, that are successful. I don't have to find, I'm not born and raised and condemned to the wrong side of the tracks. I don't have to accept that livelihood, so to speak. Not that it's horrible and terrible, but for me, it was just like a nightmare, because I didn't fit in anywhere. And so it was like, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my identity. And I was just constantly searching. And through all the traumas of childhood, through that searching, it was like, okay, well, drugs and alcohol are my go-to for my coping skills when I get, overwhelmed or when I'm triggered. Okay, so I graduated the program, and then Emery DeBusque, who was the executive director of the program, he saw potential in me and wanted me to help develop a junior staff program, where like a follow-up where you could graduate the program and then you could help implement informals and strategy for cases and for individuals. And so I got hired on staff there and moved upstairs. And that was probably the spark that that started like my desire, my drive for human services and for helping others is because I saw, like, I'm still Facebook friends with a few of the guys I saw graduate. And I was Mr. Duncan, which is hilarious at like 19. And it was, you know, to see these guys end up graduating and have families and have kids and, you know, have a productive life because they found, you know, another path, well, like, was impacting.
Lonnie unpacks the rest of his story in part 2 of this episode, premiering February 7th.